dozens of wanted criminals to jail. The operation spearheaded by Oklahoma City Police and U.S. Marshals. And this evening, we're getting a first-hand look at the effort.
Breaking news from Los Angeles this morning. Federal agents have arrested a major drug kingpin after a series of simultaneous raids across the city. 4:57 a.m., Los Angeles, California. Chinese drug lord exposed. 700 federal agents. 19 targets across the city.
Breaking news from Los Angeles this morning. Federal agents have arrested a major drug kingpin after a series of simultaneous raids across the city.
Ports, warehouses, and quiet private homes all connected. What followed would expose a hidden distribution engine moving drugs, money, and fear through California. Let me show you. All units, it is it. Operation Silent Harbor is green. Move. Hit every target before dawn. Go. 4:10 a.m. Los Angeles. The city slept under a wet gray sky. Fog from the Pacific swallowed the freeway's muffling sound, hiding motion. Streetlights glowed inside the mist. Nothing moved but inside a fortified command center near downtown. The atmosphere was electric. Maps burned red. Radios whispered. A storm was coiled and waiting. 19 targets were locked in place. Warehouses near the port, quiet houses in the suburbs, a guarded mansion in Arcadia. More than 700 federal officers stood in full gear. No speeches, no countdown. Every briefing had been completed days earlier. The only signal now was a single word flashing on the main screen. Operation Silent Harbor. FBI, IC, HSI, DEA, and U.S. Marshals prepared rifles. Check night vision tightened gloves. Convoys idled with engines rumbling. Helicopters floated without lights over Long Beach. At the center of every plane was one name, Liang Xiao. Los Angeles was holding its breath. The storm was about to break. Comment ready if you want to see the man behind this machine. Liang Xiao, 42, lived in Los Angeles for 10 years. He looked successful. Perfect suits, quiet luxury cars, charity dinners. His name was on plaques and donations. Everyone greeted him and no one asked where his money came from. Beneath that perfect surface, something darker was evolving. Investigators would later discover Xiao did not buy loyalty with kindness. He shaped it with pressure. He looked for people already cornered. A bakery behind on rent. A contractor drowning in bills. A family afraid of deportation. He arrived with a smile and solutions. Loans with no paperwork, visas appearing overnight, a lawyer paid in cash. Problems vanished and favors began. But when anyone hesitated, the tone changed. One landlord in San Gabriel tried to back out of a lease. First came a reminder, then a smashed windshield. A note under the door. You owe more than rent. 2 weeks later, he vanished. His wife reported him missing. His car was later found abandoned at the port of Los Angeles. Keys still in the ignition. Xiao's shipping companies operated from those same docks. On paper, they moved seafood, auto parts, electronics. At night, trucks left through back gates and rolled across the Southwest without slowing. GPS logs showed identical routes at identical hours. The paperwork never matched the deposits. The money belonged to something else entirely. Hundreds of kilograms of heroin and fentanyl every month, feeding overdoses from California to Ohio. He also owned massage parlors, karaoke lounges, hospitality clubs that never closed. Behind tinted windows, women from East Asia and Central America lived in shifts. Their passports were locked away. Their families were threatened overseas. One woman tried to escape through a service alley. She made it as far as the docks. A week later, fishermen found a body tangled in mowing lines at birth. 203. No ID, just bruises. Xiao understood power in two currencies, gifts and fear. In the morning, he donated to cultural festivals. In the evening, he met men with knives and guns. Retired detectives were invited to banquets. Local officials received campaign money. Nobody asked. Nobody wanted to see behind the curtains. Neighbors saw a philanthropist. Investigators saw a commander with layers of soldiers, drivers, couriers, accountants. Every route was redundant. Every failure was absorbed. The structure was military, not random. By late summer, analysts reached the same conclusion. Los Angeles was no longer facing a crime problem. It was hosting an engine, a hidden supply machine. America had to act before the coastline was only the beginning. Hit like and comment. Yes, if you want to see all 19 targets hit at once. 4:57 a.m. Los Angeles. For 30 seconds, the city was perfectly still. A thin fog rolled between warehouses. The port crane stood frozen in the dark, and every apartment window around Arcadia reflected nothing but silence. Convoys were in position. Helicopters waited above the harbor. Tactical teams crouched behind steel doors. Snipers lay flat on rooftops, rifles resting on cold metal rails. Then the radios clicked. 19 targets detonated at the same second. Steel hinges tore from frames. Flashbangs burst white in narrow hallways. Shockwaves boomed across alleys like thunder trapped between buildings. A dozen neighborhoods lit up at once. Long Beach, Monterey Park, San Gabriel, Rosemay, Arcadia. Los Angeles had seen earthquakes, fires, riots, but never this. This was precise. This was coordinated. This was war at dawn. At a cargo warehouse near the port, FBI hostage rescue team hit the doors with hydraulic rams. Sparks jumped. The steel finally folded. Inside, masked workers froze beneath fluorescent lights. On tables around them lay bricks of powder sealed in plastic and scales still running. They tried to scatter through aisles of metal shelving, but armed agents surged forward in tight formation. Boots pounded concrete. Shadows moved. Warehouse walls echoed with impact. On Interstate 5, 3 delivery vans attempted to flee. Their engines roared as they swerved toward a side road. U.S. Marshals were already waiting. 2 armored interceptors blocked the front. Another sealed the rear. Tires screeched. The vans had no path left. Drivers slammed on brakes, bodies thrown forward as agents advanced with shields, raised headlights, cutting through fog and dust. North of downtown, at a luxury home in Arcadia, another battle unfolded. The house was beautiful from the outside. Trimmed hedges, warm lights, marble steps. Inside, everything was fortified. Reinforced doors, hidden cameras. The air smelled of perfume and gun oil. Ice. HSI teams climbed the staircase under blinding flashbang smoke. Furniture had been piled against bedroom entrances. Steel rods wedged beneath door handles. It did not matter. Rams hit wood. Hinges cracked. Walls shook. Men ran. Some tried to hide behind closets. Others attempted to reach the garage. Automatic weapons were found under beds, taped beneath tables wrapped in towels. Agents cleared room after room, flashlights sweeping corners, muzzle brakes glowing faintly from heat. Outside, helicopters circled with no lights, rotors cutting cold air. At a commercial block near Monterey Park, DEA struck a processing apartment. Racks of fentanyl powder stood drying next to kitchen exhaust fans. Packaging machines clattered. When the door collapsed, workers jumped through a fire escape. They did not make it far. A team on ropes descended from the roof landing in front of them, boots hitting steel stairs with force. Across the city, alarms wailed, glass-shattered engine noise filled the streets, but the most important target was still ahead. A black SUV in a basement garage where Liang Jiao kept his escape route ready. The storm was not finished. The hunt was moving toward him step by step, floor by floor. Los Angeles had entered the fight and nothing would be the same by sunrise. What they found next was hidden rooms, secret warehouses, and human lives. Comment deeper if you want to see what they uncovered inside. 6:25 a.m., Los Angeles. The explosions had stopped, but the operation was not over. What followed was slower, quieter, and far more revealing. The night of impact turned into the morning of discovery. By sunrise, the city was sealed in layers of federal presence. Roads were blocked, warehouses were taped, patrol cars sat at intersections with engines running their headlights glowing through the fog. Convoys moved carefully from target to target, not to fight, but to secure search and uncover. At a massive distribution center near the port, agents opened loading bays that had been welded shut. Inside, the air smelled of metal and chemicals. Forklifts parked beside pallets of seafood boxes. Ice was melting on the floor. Beneath the frozen fish were bricks wrapped in green plastic stamped with a red dragon symbol. Each brick weighed the same. Each brick was destined for cities thousands of miles away. Elsewhere, officers entered a quiet office building that looked like tax services from the outside. The front room had plants brochures, family photos. Behind a false wall, they found shelves of cash-counting machines humming next to portable generators. Stacks of envelopes filled with dollars, yuan, and pesos were sorted by region: Chicago, Columbus, Omaha, Spokane. It was not a business. It was a financial nerve center built to move money faster than authorities could track. In a former restaurant converted into a private club, the lights were still on. Tables were set. Music equipment waited for another night. Federal teams spread through the rooms. Behind a soundproof door, they reached a windowless basement. The air was hot and stale. Beds lined the walls. Dozens of phones lay charging in rows. On one table, investigators found passports, real names, fake names, multiple photos of the same faces. Some documents belonged to women who had not been seen by neighbors in months. Others had no local record at all. At a small industrial yard, Ikshai found shipping containers used as holding rooms. Inside were mattresses, plastic chairs, and a bucket. The metal walls had scratches. The steel doors had extra locks. In one corner, a pile of identification cards lay covered in dust. None of them matched the names on the cargo manifests. Everywhere the teams went, the same pattern repeated, a peaceful exterior masking a hidden mechanism. Behind a travel agency, they discovered a room full of routers and VPN towers. Wires hung like vines along the walls. Screens displayed accounting ledgers in Chinese characters and coded symbols. USB drives were everywhere. Agents collected them carefully, knowing they contained pathways, buyers, suppliers, routes, payment systems. On the roof of a condominium complex, DEA chemists examined ventilation ducts stained with powder. They scraped samples and sealed evidence bags. The chemical signatures matched seizures from the Midwest. What left Los Angeles did not stay in California. It fed a national pipeline. By late morning, a temporary command center was established in an abandoned supermarket. Folding tables filled the aisles. Evidence grew by the minute. Rifles with filed serial numbers, stacks of cash wrapped in rubber bands, suitcases full of perfume bottles concealing narcotics, surveillance cameras, notebooks with names and dates, shipping labels for seafood, electronics, toys. One senior agent walked the road slowly. "This is not scattered crime," he said. "This is architecture." Los Angeles had been living with a hidden machine, a machine that mixed money, drugs, and human lives, and the walls were finally coming down. The raid was no longer a battle. It had become an anatomy lesson, a careful exposure of something vast and organized. The storm that began before dawn was now moving into daylight. Every new room opened another layer. Every discovery led deeper, and at the center of every path was one name: Liang Jiao. 6:55 a.m., Los Angeles. By the time daylight touched the rooftops, the picture of Liang Jiao's empire was no longer a mystery. It was structure, it was layers, it was design. Agents from FBI, ICE, HSI, DEA, and U.S. Marshals stood over tables piled with evidence. They were not looking at random items. They were looking at components of a system. At the top of every chart and every timeline sat one name: Xiao. He did not shout orders. He did not leave messages. He operated the way intelligence officers operate, through distance and discipline. His public face remained charming. Charity investments, community dinners. But privately, he led a network that behaved like a military unit. Beneath him were 5 lieutenants, each responsible for a separate domain: narcotics money, human trafficking, corruption enforcement. Each lieutenant carried a quiet authority. They oversaw teams who never met one another, who used different routes, different warehouses, different vans. If one segment failed, the others remained untouched. That redundancy was intentional. Zhao had built something that could survive interruptions. It could bend, it could heal, it could regroup. The narcotics wing ran the supply chain. Trucks left Los Angeles at night carrying products marked as seafood electronics or household goods. On paper, every shipment was clean, but the weight was always wrong. Agents later confirmed that drugs were hidden inside frozen fish, inside engines, even inside ceramic tiles, micro compartments, vacuum seals, layers of deception. The financial wing was equally precise. Money flowed through shell companies, real estate holdings, and charitable foundations. Ledger entries were disguised as donations or event sponsorships. $1 million could vanish inside a festival budget only to reappear through currency exchanges in Nevada, Illinois, or New Jersey. Every transaction was routed below reporting thresholds. Every deposit was split between dozens of accounts. It looked like generosity. It was laundering. The human trafficking wing was the most disturbing. Women were brought from overseas with promises of work visas and safety. Their documents were taken, their movements were controlled. They lived in apartments they did not choose, worked in clubs they did not own, and followed rules dictated by men who answered directly to Xiao's lieutenants. A few resisted. They were moved, silenced, or simply vanished. Records suggested at least 40 individuals had no traceable presence beyond this network. The corruption wing worked quietly. Jiao paid for uniforms, dinners, campaign donations, small favors. Nothing dramatic, nothing that drew attention. But over time, goodwill turned into access. Information arrived early. Investigations slowed. Questions were forgotten. Doors opened. And if kindness did not work, the enforcement wing did. A group of men rarely seen in public traveled at night. They used unmarked vehicles. They carried no phones. When someone refused to cooperate, a landlord, a driver, an employee, these men visited a smashed window, a broken finger, a whispered threat, no paperwork, no police reports. The message was always clear. Every part of this structure pointed upward. Every route, every dollar, every act of violence served one purpose: expansion. Investigators looked at the evidence and understood why Los Angeles had been so quiet. The network was not chaotic. It was efficient. It was profitable, and it was growing. For 3 years, it operated beneath the surface of a major American city, untouched and unseen. What the raid had finished was only the surface. What remained was the internal architecture, a design that could have spread far beyond California if it had not been intercepted. This was no gang. This was no neighborhood crime. It was something national, a threat with discipline, reach, and ambition. And now it had been exposed. 7:20 a.m., Los Angeles. By the time the sun cleared the hills above the San Gabriel Mountains, the operation had shifted from assault to accountability. The noise of flashbangs and engines was gone. What remained was paperwork, chains of evidence, and armed guards posted at every entrance of every seized property. A city that had seemed unaware only hours earlier was now surrounded by federal vehicles, flashing lights cutting through morning haze. Inside a repurposed supermarket, prosecutors began assembling the first case files. Xiao was processed under heavy guard. Fingerprints, photographs, inventory of possessions. Agents laid out evidence in long rows. Cash ledgers, weapons phones, passports, USB drives. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of kilograms of narcotics seized. Millions of dollars in mixed currency. Dozens of weapons with filed serial numbers. None of it felt temporary. It felt structural. Over the next 72 hours, federal charges were unsealed. Jiao faced an avalanche. Conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, interstate trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering. When a story like this ends, it's tempting to close the tab, take a breath, and move on with your day. But what happened in Los Angeles before sunrise isn't just another headline or another federal raid we'll all forget about by next week. It is a reminder, a harsh, unavoidable reminder of something deeper about the country we live in. For years, a machine was operating right under the surface of a major American city. A machine that moved drugs, money, and human beings with the same cold efficiency as a corporation. And it grew not because people were blind, but because it learned how to hide in our blind spots in good neighborhoods, behind charity dinners, inside businesses that looked harmless. It thrived in the space between what we assume is safe and what we never bother to question. The lesson here is uncomfortable but necessary. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears a suit, shakes hands, donates to festivals, and smiles at cameras. And sometimes the people who need help most, the women without passports, the workers trapped in debt, the families targeted by fear, are those we rarely see. So as the dust settles, ask yourself what systems around us look stable but aren't, what communities are asking for help but we're not hearing them, and what dangers are we tolerating, simply because they've learned to blend in. If this operation proved anything, it's that silence is a luxury we can't afford. Awareness is protection, and paying attention. Truly paying attention is sometimes the only thing standing between order and chaos. If you're still here with me, thank you. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this operation shocked you the most? The drugs, the money, or the human trafficking? Drop your answer in the comments. I read everyone. If you believe communities deserve safety and dignity, leave a blue heart. And if you want to see more investigations like this, hit like, tap, subscribe, and share this video so more people understand what was hiding beneath Los Angeles. We're not done, and awareness is our first line of defense.